Why hello there, this is B.O.X Productions, and welcome to another bonus episode of Path of Exile. In this episode, we're finally going to complete something that's been hinted at throughout the whole game, the Lord's Labyrinth.
You stand before the gates of the Lord's Labyrinth. Within these walls, the Lady of Justice doth preside. She shall weigh your mind in one hand, your heart in the other. Should she find you wanting, death shall be your sentence. Should she find you worthy, you will be given the loyalty and love of an empire. The Lord's Labyrinth awaits you. Choose wisely, strike quickly, trust completely. And may you find the ending that you deserve.
You know, a simple, hey, how's it going, will have been fine.
The just goddess presides over us all. The future of the Empire rests in her even hands.
And this is what we use to choose what difficulty we want. Right next to every entrance and exit, there's a little map here so you can keep track of where you are.
In the impressionable youth of my reign, I was encouraged to believe in the precious nature of my imperial blood. The divine claret, as one fool of a courtier would repeat with tiresome regularity. Unfortunately, my divine claret refused to pour from one cup to another. Try as I might, with a lovely procession of young and ever dutiful wives, my noble seed simply would not sprout. Who then to choose as my worthy successor? With the candidates on hand either mediocre at best or maniacal at worst, I found myself in quite the quandary. That's when fortune took me by the hand and led me to a forgotten tome on a forgotten shelf in the quietest corner of San Library. A tome entitled Ancient Traditions of Asmarian Ascendancy. The rest, one might say, is history.
Alright, let's talk about the Labyrinth for a little bit. One of the main reasons why people go through the Labyrinth is to unlock an Ascendancy class for their character. Each character has 3 different Ascendancy classes to choose from, except for the Scion, who only has 1. These classes can give very powerful abilities that can completely change a build and how it would work otherwise. They're definitely worth getting. You can also get enchantments for your equipment, either gloves, boots, or helmet, depending on which difficulty you choose. They can add an extra layer of offense or defense, depending on which kind of enchantment you get. And last but not least, there are several treasure chests hidden both throughout the Labyrinth and at the very end, where there's a huge treasure room. To get these chests, you either have to go through an obstacle course, or have the right key to open them. You'll see how this works as we go along. This is something we haven't seen yet, and I'm pretty sure it's unique to the Labyrinth. All you have to do is stand in this circle while the pillar moves around the room. You could think of it like an escort mission of sorts. that's how you get to that particular treasure chest.
The weary traveler draws close to the end of the path. The Azmeri were the first culture known in history to use trials of strength, wisdom, and spirit to select its chieftains. The first Lord's Trial was a rough-hewn maze festooned with wild animals and brutal traps, crafted to test aspiring Azmerian leaders' body, mind, and soul. In conquering the adversities of the maze, a champion proved they were capable of bearing the crushing burden of chieftainship. The first trials were simple contraptions reflecting simple times. As the Azmerian civilization grew in number and complexity, so did the trials, from treacherous mazes to bewildering labyrinths. Alas, there are no surviving descriptions of the labyrinth that tested and proved the worth of Viruso Prima Imperialis. I imagine it was quite something to behold. When one defiles the effigy, one defiles the Emperor.
And this here's the big boss of the Labyrinth, Zaro. You have to fight him on 3 different occasions, but during the first 2 fights, if you bring his life down a certain amount, he'll stop the fight and leave. And also, the first 2 fights will have different mechanics, whether it's unique enemies that will attack you, or things that will curse you, or things that'll just make him stronger. You can usually destroy or disable these things during the fight, but any that are left over will be around during the final fight. But keeping them around can give you more rewards at the end, so there's pros and cons to your decisions.
An empire must be built to weather any storm.
Alright, so let's continue talking about the Labyrinth. Both the layout and the mechanics of the boss fight change every day. So if you play it for yourself, it'll probably be completely different than what I'm going through right now. Well, not completely different, since this is normal mode. But the thing you have to remember is, you have to beat the entire thing in one go. So no dying, no portaling out, and no game crashing. That last one tends to be a problem for me, because whenever I'm recording this game, it tends to crash a lot. But fortunately, it only crashed once this time.
The son of Esamir met the son of Zan upon the road to the imperial throne. The Eternal offered his cunning, his eyes and ears bought and paid for. The Esamite offered his strength, his sword, earned in the arena. A pact was forged, with the Labyrinth as witness. 2 men separated by blood, 2 men bound by hope, 2 men, and only 1 emperor.
had to cheese my way through that one. But whatever works, I guess. In this chest we find a trinket. These items make the mechanics of the next Exaro encounter easier to deal with.
The Ezomite and the Eternal took their rest in the lee of Strife's gale and remembered the travelled road. Beast and fiend had fallen and bled to the Ezomite's sword, swift and true. Trap and trial had risen and succumbed to the Eternal's wits, quick and shrewd. Two men had cried their triumph, a warrior and his guide, whilst other ascendants echoed their pride with anguish and agony.
When the time comes to strike, an emperor strikes without hesitation. To entertain doubt is to dance with death.
And just like before the first encounter, we get a break room.
The Azmeri were consummate survivors. They had to be, having been sired in the most inhospitable range of mountains in all of Rayclast. Unfortunate, some might say. I do not. I believe it was the making of them, and of us, their descendants. So it is no wonder that they developed the Lord's trial. With survival being a moment-by-moment concern, that harried people grew to understand power quite intimately. Strong leadership is able to bridge the chasm between existence and extinction. Poor leadership might see an entire tribe vanish into that same chasm. When the Azmeri descended from their mountains to conquer the fecund lands of central Rayclast, they thrived and multiplied with utmost alacrity in those more forgiving climes. For is it not poverty that teaches us how we might excel in times of plenty? Some things that slumber should never be awoken. Be singular of purpose.
And as you might have noticed, because we had that trinket, the first gargoyle we touched died immediately.
pity the Emperor who sits alone on his throne.
The warrior bled upon Azaro's stones and cursed Azaro's ilk. He looked upon the walls of his tomb, built by his masters, his enemies, and called for the first ones to carry him to the forest and fields of his Ezomir. Yet while the first ones remained silent, the guide did speak. Of secrets planted by clever hands enslaved by gold. And with one such secret, plucked the life of the warrior from the first one's jaws.
The icons with silver doors on them have runes that need a silver key to open. What's inside is usually treasure and stuff, but I guess I decided not to show it off this time.
A guide, cornered and quailing. A warrior, watching. The moment bathed in the shadow of doubt, of ambition, of an imperial throne, and a people made free by an emperor of Ezomir. The warrior threw off that cold and cloying shadow and struck down the slavering beasts. The guide looked to the warrior with gratitude in his eyes and spoke of doubt, of ambition, of an imperial throne and a people made free by an emperor of Zaan.
Passageways aren't always obvious, and sometimes they're hidden. Sometimes you need to click on a wall or a statue or something to open them up. This is a dark shrine, which I also believe is unique to the Labyrinth. They do random things, and you don't know what it'll do until you click on it.
Aspirant can afford to be promising. An emperor must keep those promises. The custom of the Lord's trial was upheld throughout the founding years of the Empire. Verusso's successor, Caspiro, was a low-born legionnaire, the lone survivor of a labyrinth that claimed the lives of every high-born contender, including Verusso's only son. Caspiro proved to be every bit the emperor that Verusso was. Alas, the Lord's labyrinth was corrupted by those with the vanity to consider their blood more precious than their empire. Selfish blood breeds selfish times, and the Empire paid for it with its own blood, with the Knight of 1,000 Ribbons, with that most regal of cannibals, Emperor Romira. Not anymore. I, Isaro Frecius, shall return us to justice. I shall build the greatest Lord's labyrinth in Asmerian history, and my successor shall be chosen by the goddess herself. Only when the Lord's labyrinth is drenched in selfish blood can a true leader ascend the throne.
The guide led the warrior down a path that wound and twisted through fields of blossoming promises, green-bladed hopes. The warrior closed his eyes, a mere moment to feel the warmth of the sun on his back and to drink from the guide's proffered flask. Now the warrior staggers and crawls down the wounded, tortured causeway. The bitterness stings his weeping eyes, the fire roars in his belly, consuming him. The warrior will not ascend. Instead he hunts, guided by his love for Esamir.
That's a bummer, dude.
A throne is the most devious trap of them all.
This is the final battle with Azaro. Any of the previous fights mechanics that survived will be here. And if you're playing in any of the higher difficulties, there will also be traps around the room. But there's no more running for Azaro, so just survive and kill him.
Before your emperor, you are worthy. Before the goddess of justice, you are worthy. Receive our blessings, embrace our gifts, and rise, Ascendant. For this is the ending that we all deserve.
This is where you choose your Ascendancy class. For the type of build we're going for, I think the best one would probably be the Berserker.
The savage path is always swift and sure.
and this is where we get to enchant an item. Since this is normal difficulty, we can only choose to enchant our gloves. And of course the treasure. You can only open as many chests as you have keys. And we're done here. Well, that's it for the Lord's Labyrinth and the end of this bonus episode, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like and comment, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and all that stuff. It really helps me out. In our next episode, we'll continue where we left off in Act 5. I'll see you next time.